Algebra 2, Concept 8. In this concept, you're going to write your own quadratic functions. We're going to use two of the equation forms that you learned in earlier concepts. So you're going to use vertex form and intercept form. So let's just refresh your memory of those two forms. So vertex form of a quadratic equation is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. And remember, the vertex is the point hk. Intercept form is y equals a times x minus p times x minus q, where p and q are the x-intercepts. So let's look at this first question, example. So you need to write a quadratic equation using a vertex and a point. So when you're given vertex and a point, you can use the vertex form of the equation. So I always write it down by the problem. And it says, write an equation of the parabola that passes through 13, 8 and has a vertex at 3, 2. So the point 13, 8 is just that. It's just an xy point, and I'm going to label it, and you should too on your paper, x and y. And then the vertex is our h and k values. So in order to write the particular equation of this situation, we need to find the a value. That's the only thing we don't know. But you can plug in everything but the a value. So we are going to plug in 8 for y. We'll leave a as it is because we don't know a. 13 for x. And then minus 3 for h squared, and then plus 2, which is our k value. Now what we'll do is we'll just simply do the math. So you're going to subtract 2 from each side, square the 10, and then divide by 100 to get a by itself. So a is 3/50. Once you find the a value, now you can write the equation for this particular quadratic. So we're going to plug in the a value, and now we'll plug in our h and our k values as well. But we want the equation, so we're not going to plug in a particular point. We're going to just plug in the general variables x and y. So there's the equation of the quadratic for this particular situation in vertex form. Number 2, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to use a given vertex and a point. So we're going to write an equation of a parabola that's passing through the point 0, negative 24, and has a vertex of negative 6, 12. So label those 2 points, x and y, and then the vertex h and k. Recall that vertex form of a quadratic equation, and then plug in all the values that you know except for a, which is our unknown, and that the value we'll solve for. Then just do the math to solve for a. So in this case, we'll need to add 12 to both sides, square our 6, and then divide by 36. So a equals negative 1/3. Now, just like before, you're going to plug in that particular a value, the h and the k value, but we'll leave our x and our y as variables. Remember that the form of vertex form, we need to subtract the h value. So when you subtract a negative 6, it's like adding 6. All right, example 3. Now we're going to write a quadratic equation if we know a point and the x-intercepts. So the form that we'll use is intercept form. So you just have to switch gears and write that form in the space where you're going to work your problem. Then label the point and the intercepts. So the point is still xy, but our intercepts are p and q. Then plug the values in. So y is 5, and that equals a times x is 2. When you subtract a negative 2, it's like adding 2, and then times 2 minus 4. Then you'll just do the math. So what's inside the parentheses first, and then the multiplication, and then finally the division. So this particular a value is negative 5/8. Then you'll plug in negative 5/8 for a, negative 2 and 4 for P and Q. But remember that the general form, you have to subtract those values. So x minus a negative 2 is the same thing as adding 2. And then we'll have an x minus 4. Here's a real-life situation. A meteorologist creates a parabola to predict the temperature tomorrow, where x is the number of hours after midnight and y is the temperature in degrees. Write a function that models this temperature over time. So if you look at your graph, you need to figure out what you have, what information you're given about this situation. So notice that we have two intercepts, x-intercepts, and then just another point value. So the point is 0, 9.6, and then our x-intercepts are 4 and 24. And I'm just letting the first value be p and the second one be q. Then you're going to use that intercept form of a quadratic equation and plug in everything you know except for a. The solve on these problems are the same, so you'll do what's inside the parentheses first, you'll multiply together on the right, and then divide. So in this case, a equals 1/10. The final step is to plug in the a value along with the x and the y variables, and then the particular numbers for h and k. So the function or the math equation that models this situation is y equals 1/10 times x minus 4 times x minus 24. Here this says write an equation of the parabola. So again, look at the graph and see what you have. Notice that you can see 2 points that are crossing the x-axis and then another point that's on the parabola. So you'll want to pick out those values. So one intercept is at -1, 0, and one is at 7, 0, and then the point is at 5, 3. Then label those, P, Q, X, and Y. Always label what you have because it makes the plug-in step much easier. So you're going to plug it into intercept form. So you'll put in your Y value and then your X and your P and your Q. Do the math inside the parentheses, multiply, and then divide. So A will reduce down to -1/4. And just as before, you'll take that value and plug it in for A into the general intercept form of a quadratic equation. Now you've got some time for independent practice. So pause the video and you have 2 problems to work where you're going to do just the exact same thing that we've been doing in the notes. So you're going to find the A value and then write the equation. Then come back and check your answers. All right, look at what you did for number 1. See that you recognize that you need to use vertex form to write this equation. Make sure that you plugged in the values correctly. It's good to label those values, x and y and h and k, so that when you plug in those numbers, it just makes it easier to get the numbers in the right place. And then if you get an equation, or a fraction that when you divide it out, it doesn't divide evenly, don't round. Just use it in fraction form. So the equation is y equals 16/81 times x minus 10 squared minus 4. On the second one, hopefully that you notice you need to use the intercept form of a quadratic equation. Make sure that you labeled your points and your intercepts correctly. It actually doesn't matter if the -1 and 5 are, it doesn't matter which one's P and which one's Q. Check your plug-in to make sure that you got your values in the right position and that when you solved, you were able to come up with -3/5 for A. Then finally, the equation that you should have arrived at is y equals -3/5 x plus 1, because we're subtracting a negative, and then x minus 5. All right, and that concludes the notes on how to write an equation using vertex or intercept form.